Hey everybody, it's Adam Tracy, and with Curacao still not being able to figure out what to do with its licensing model, you are seeing new licenses sort of pop up, and the most notable of them is Tobic, which is a native land in Canada, much the same structure as Kanawaki, and in this partnership with like a private company, they very swiftly, right, as of 2023, created a gaming license. And it is nice because you can obtain the license in about 4 weeks, right, depending on how quickly you can prepare the application, which is standard, like business plan, the whole 9 yards, right? No different than Comoros or any of these other places that I've spoken about before. And you're sort of on your way. And there's a cost breakdown, which I'll post online. It's not terrible, but it's very quick. And there's some flexibility in it because inherently you don't have to be like a Canadian entity. You could use a foreign entity. And there really isn't economic substance to speak of. Like you couldn't, even if you wanted to. I believe Tobic has less than 2,000 residents. I mean, it's just not necessary. So it's an interesting option. Some of the, obviously there's some AML considerations, but one of like the drop dead sort of things is onboarding American players, which logically makes sense and would put you in peril anyway. And then, your standard run of the mill North Koreans and all that. But if you're looking to sort of bootstrap, an easy regulation to get going and attract Asian players, South American, Africa, any of those places, it's great because you're not going to find anything that for that cost that also gives you the range or the ability at least to connect with financial institutions. Like people contact me all the time about Comoros because it's cheap, but Comoros, the ability to get merchant processing or banking is possible, but it's difficult. I mean, it's really difficult. And a lot of times you wind up having to use one of the myriad of banks that are licensed for literally the same amount of money, which isn't very much, in Comoros. And that's not it's not a great solution, right? Let's say that. But Tobic, albeit very new in its infancy, and really more of a private endeavor than anything else, right? I mean, the feedback that I've gotten in speaking to those involved is mostly like we approached them, right, and we pitched the tribe on how we're going to do it, and we're going to run the whole thing, right? So it's good in that sense, right? Like, when you compare it to like regulators and just how things work, I almost rather deal with somebody who is, into the industry and understands it from an operational standpoint versus vice versa. So I think that's positive, right? And I think with Curacao being the way it is, there's just no reason. And Costa Rica is really just a mess. Like finding the financial institutions is getting harder, but it's still there. So you kind of have that choice. But I think at the end of the day, it's worth looking at Tobic because the freedom with which you can operate, right? It is a license, right? Like in the sense that the better software providers will work with you, right? And you see that in the unlicensed context, a lot of the bigger, providers that are giving you the slots, the table games, the, live dealer games, they're not going to work with you if you're not licensed, right? So like the Marshall Islands, Costa Rica, Nevis, wherever you want to like camp out, which is great. You can find those, right? And there's providers that do it, but maybe it's not the most popular games. And the psyche of a lot of players who are online is like they literally go to places where they have that particular game, like that particular slot. So there's this sort of brand affinity that goes with, some of the bigger software providers, which you may lose without a license. And, they're crypto agnostic, right? Which you saw in Curacao, you see a bit in Isle of Man where if you want to be like a crypto only casino, or even like accept crypto or do payouts in crypto, they're a little sketched out about that, and or they want you to get like an ancillary license to do the conversion, and now you're getting like a crypto license or payments license that you don't really need, right? And in a follow-up video, I'll talk about the concept of a paying agent, which if you're in the gaming industry, you know very well. But for those who are sort of trying to kick off things, you know, I'll hit on that topic next. But I think, you know, as a foothold, right? And I've said this a million times, like in the same, you know, gaming, Forex, especially those two verticals, it's all about brand equity and brand recognition. And like the minute you screw up, right? Like the minute the guy, you know, for some reason is late getting his $25 redemption, that's the guy that goes on all the forums and just smears you, and then everybody bails, right? Based on that. Meanwhile, the guy who put in 500,000 and had to wait an extra day, he doesn't even care. So, you know, you got to build up that equity, right? And for a relatively low investment and a very quick time to market with the ability to actually connect to real financial institutions and payment rails, right? SEPA, SWIFT, IBAN, crypto, you name it, Tobic is something to definitely take a look into. So if you have any questions regarding licensing there, definitely hit me up. I'm Adam Tracy, adam@adamtracy.io. We'll talk to you next time. Cheers.